right, let's shift gears a little bit. Let's talk Hall of Fame. The ballot came out this week, and unlike in recent years, I think since 2013 was the last time we didn't have a shoe-in first ballot Hall of Famer. I mean, you remember in previous years, we had guys like Jeter was in last year, Randy Johnson, Pedro Martinez. These were guys that, Greg Maddux, these were guys that everybody knew was going to get in. And this year we don't have that. It's the first year that we don't have an incoming player that's like that. I mean, the names that are the top WAR guys that are on the ballot for the first time, guys like Tim Hudson, Mark Burley, Torrey Hunter, and then the existing guys on the ballot. The guys that you think would get in based on the numbers are guys like Clemens, Bonds, Sheffield, Manny Ramirez, Sammy Sosa, who are all tied to steroids. And then you have, in my opinion, who's the crown jewel of the whole class, is Curt Schilling. Mm-hmm. Schilling is, based on his numbers and his career, a first ballot Hall of Famer. He's a top 20 starting pitcher in the history of baseball, probably the greatest postseason starting pitcher ever to toe the rubber, and somebody who, growing up, I hated more than any player. Probably, I mean, he was up there with Manny Ramirez and David Ortiz for players that I hated, and Pedro for players I hated the most. He burned the Yankees in 2001 and in 2004. You take Schilling out of that equation, and the Yankees win probably both World Series.
Yeah, definitely.
In 01 and 04. I hated this guy's guts, but by the end of that guy's career, I respected what he did on the field. And, I mean, we know why he's not in the Hall of Fame. We don't have to get into why he's not in the Hall of Fame. But he had 70% of the vote last year. And, is this Schilling's year? And what do you think of Schilling being kind of in a class of his own in 2021?
Yeah, I definitely think that he should be in the Hall of Fame, especially this year. Do I think he'll get it? I think he will get in this year. He almost got there last year. It's about time where he gets in the Hall of Fame, though, especially after a guy like Mike Messina got in, who was a great pitcher, but I think Schilling was a tier better than him. Schilling's an all-time gamer. He's an all-time postseason pitcher. He definitely should be in the Hall of Fame. So I think this will be the year that he gets in. Other than that, though, Billy Wagner, you have Scott Rolen, Omar Vizquel. It's kind of been a debate for a while on Vizquel. He's more of an accumulator. He's a guy that played for a while, more known for his defense, but he accumulated a lot of hits in his career. Decent batting average. He's not a Hall of Famer in my opinion. He's a very borderline guy, but he might actually eventually get in, but not this year.
Yeah, he played for a very long time, and the thing about Vizquel is he was just a really good player every year. He was like a 3-point something wins above replacement kind of guy. He really only had one great year, and he was just kind of that guy who was just a staple at shortstop for about 20 seasons. Mm-hmm. Very good player for 20 seasons. But when you think of Omar Vizquel, do you really think Hall of Fame? To me, he doesn't make the cut there.
Yeah, and just running through some of the other names, just so everybody knows some of the other guys on the ballot. So this year we have Schilling, we have Clemens, Bonds, Vizquel, Scott Rolen, Wagner, Sheffield, Todd Helton, Manny Ramirez, Jeff Kent, Andrew Jones, Sammy Sosa, Andy Pettitte, Bobby Abreu, and then a few other guys like Dan Herron, Barry Zito, and so on and so forth. Not a lot of those guys are fringe Hall of Famers, but they're not Hall of Famers. They're very good careers, but they're not Hall of Famers. And then the other guys, other than Schilling, are the guys with the steroids. What year will be the year that finally these guys get into the Hall of Fame? Last year, Roger Clemens was at 61% of votes, or is that
percent of the ballot? Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah. So he got 61% last year. Barry Bonds right there too. I think that they'll slowly move up the board. How many more years do they have on the ballot?
So Bonds and Clemens only have one more year. You only get 10 years on the ballot.
So I think that either this year or next, that'll be a very interesting thing to see. I don't know if they need 14% more. I don't know if they had 5 more years, I'd definitely say yes. But with 2 more years left, that's going to be interesting to see. I think they should get in though.
I don't think that they're going to get in this year or next year. I think that it'll be the Veterans Committee that eventually votes both of them in. Because if you just kind of have your ear to the ground a little bit, it's the old school writers, it's the old school baseball people that are against Bonds and Clemens getting in. You talk to the players now, You listen to interviews of different guys around the game that have been playing since Bonds retired. They think Bonds is a first ballot Hall of Famer. They would put him in the Hall of Fame. They don't care about the steroid stuff. They look at what these guys did on the field. Mm-hmm. So kind of this like new generation of writers, I think and new generation of players, I think eventually Bonds and Clemens are going to get in the Hall of Fame. Mm-hmm. But I don't think it's going to be this year or next year. They've kind of stagnated in the low 60s, high 50s for percent of the vote. I don't think it's going to happen in 2021, but I do think that they will be Hall of Famers at some point.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. That's probably the way it'll end up working out, is what Justin just explained right there. And for this year specifically, it actually, usually there's at least two guys that'll get voted in. It's very rare that you just see one guy. But I think this year, especially since they didn't have the the whole ceremony last year, you might just see Curt Schilling get voted in, and then you'll see him just join the ceremony with Jeter and the other guys from last year, like Larry Walker.
Larry Walker, yeah.
And those were the two guys last year, too. And then there was one last guy with the Veterans Committee also that got in?
I believe there was. It might have been Ted Simmons.
Okay.
But yes. I can't remember.
So then you have, that'll be the guys that, so he'll just join that ceremony pretty much. So I think this might be the year there's just one guy voted in.
Yeah, if he gets in. I don't think it's a slam dunk that Schilling gets in. I think he does get voted in.
But it's not a slam dunk, yeah.
Either this year or next year. Like I think by the time you're on the ballot the 10th time,
he's definitely going to get in at some point.
Yeah, look, we all know why the guy's not in. If I had a vote, I would have voted Curt Schilling in the first time he was on the ballot and every time since. But the guy's waited 9 years to get into the Hall of Fame. Like, I think he's done his penance. Like, I kind of look at it from that point.
Yeah, just let him in.
It's like, okay, we get it.
Especially when Mike Messina gets in over him. At that point, it's like, all right, Mike Messina, great career. Schilling, better career.
Are there any other names on that list that intrigue you? Newcomers or not?
Like, you can have an argument with Todd Helton, but he's another fringe guy. He's kind of like, that's going to be like Chase Headley, Chase Utley in a few years. It's the same kind of conversation you're going to have about that, where it's an argument that you can have, but I don't think he's a Hall of Famer.
So I'll disagree with you on that point. I would have said when he retired that he's not a Hall of Famer. But
who, Todd Helton?
Todd Helton, yeah. But
he's a great player, actually.
Great player. And, I think one of the things that hurt him and hurt Larry Walker initially was the Coors Field factor. The fact that he had his great seasons in Coors Field, very hitter-friendly ballpark. But the sabermetrics do help him. Mm-hmm. You look at his numbers back in the early 2000s with the Rockies, and you see just stupid offensive production. Mm-hmm. 42 home runs, 372 batting average, 59 doubles. He's one of the only, I think he might be the only player to have back-to-back seasons of 100 or more extra base hits. I mean, just off the charts.
He was off the charts.
Stupid offensive production.
2000 through 2004, he was off the charts as just a player for the Rockies. It was insane, the numbers he put up.
Yeah, he had a 349 batting average across those 5 seasons.
He batted 372 in 2000 with a 1.162 OPS. He had 147 RBIs and 216 hits with 59 doubles.
Yeah.
Insane.
Now, the knock on him there, though, is, you played half your games at Coors Field. Well, let's look at the sabermetrics. Let's look at OPS+. 2000, 163. 2001, 160. Then 148, 165, 165, 144. That is above Hall of Fame worthy, in my opinion. That is elite level production offensively. Mm-hmm. So, and then you want to look at WAR. 2000, 8.9 WAR. He had... this is in a row from 2000 to 2004. 8.9, 7.8, 6.3, 6.3, 8.3. Those are MVP seasons.
Yeah, they are.
That
all
is
in a row.
Yeah, all in a row. And the other seasons he had before and after sort of complement that, supplement that as far as his Hall of Fame case.
Yep. Yeah, that's why it's pretty similar to Chase Utley, as he had that 6-year stretch where they were just off the charts. And then around that, it's where he had good years. They weren't amazing years, and that's what might hurt him, his case. And also, he's not thought of as that great player you don't just think of Todd Helton and think necessarily Hall of Famer, which I don't know if that's a legitimate reason, but that's what happens sometimes, I think, with some of these players. They're not really thought of as Hall of Famers.
Yeah, so especially with the, I'm going to call it a weak ballot this year, just because there's really only one guy that I think, absolutely is a slam dunk Hall of Famer in Schilling. So you might look at a guy like Todd Helton or a Billy Wagner or a Scott Rowland, and these guys might get a larger percentage of the vote just because you don't have, Derek Jeter, Mariano Rivera, Tom Glavine, Maddox, Smoltz,
True.
all those guys where you're like, okay, we have this guy who, is a generational type talent that we know isn't, first ballot Hall of Fame type guy, like a Griffey, for example. So I think that helps somebody like Todd Helton.
Yeah, like we were talking about before with usually there's multiple guys that get voted in, so that could help him out, at least boost his votes.
Absolutely. Are there any other guys on the ballot that you think, newcomers? Pick one newcomer and just...
Let's see what we got. So, out of the newcomers, somebody that I think could potentially be a Hall of Famer, I'm going to go with probably none of them.
None of them?
I mean, guys that have a shot, like an argument. Potentially Torrey Hunter. I don't think he's a Hall of Famer, though. Mark Burley, I don't think he's a Hall of Famer. Tim Hudson, I don't think he's a Hall of Famer. Barry Zito's not a Hall of Famer. Yeah, a lot of guys like that.
A lot of guys that you think of as all-stars, even perennial all-stars, guys who are winning Gold Gloves, guys who have won Cy Young awards. I mean, Barry Zito won a Cy Young. Mark Burley was incredibly consistent over the course of his career, but just not quite there. Mm-hmm. Not quite that guy.
I did miss somebody. Nick Swisher might be a first ballot Hall of Famer.
Nick Swisher. Nick is Swishalicious.
Yeah. Guy was celebrating getting on the ballot. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that at all. But yeah. I think he knows he's obviously not going to be a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, I'm not going to make fun of anybody that's getting on the Hall of Fame ballot.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. That's a great accomplishment. So that's probably not something to poke fun at him for, but he's not a Hall of Famer.
Some other one-and-done guys, Michael Kadire, LaTroy Hawkins, A.J. Burnett, Shane Victorino. I think those guys are one-and-doners. Aramis Ramirez, Barry Zito, Dan Herron. They could stick on the ballot.
Yeah, potentially.
We saw Bobby Abreu stick on the ballot last year.
Yeah.
You need 5% of the vote. So there's some guys that could stick on the ballot. But, I hate to say this because it's not – it's really not a knock against these players. Well, maybe it is. But it would diminish the ballot a little bit if some of these guys get in.
Yeah, that definitely – like if Torrey Hunter got in.
Yeah, great player, perennial all-star – not a Hall of Famer, and I know a lot of guys are making the case for Torrey Hunter because of all the Gold Gloves and
2,500 hits.
Yeah,
but he had a 793 OPS. I just don't think he's really the kind of guy. 110 OPS plus.
No, and for me, the other thing for Hall of Fame or something that I look for as a characteristic of their career, did they have at least a couple years where they were elite? Mm-hmm. Best player in baseball type seasons. Torrey Hunter, I didn't feel like he had one of those kind of years.
Yeah, he really didn't. He was very consistent, just not any of those type of years. His best he's ever came in for MVP was 6th, which is solid. Other than that, MVP 15. He came in 15th once. But he didn't really have knock your socks off type of years, but he had a very consistent career.
Yeah, even a guy like Scott Rowland, he had a couple years, 2004 being one of those years for Rowland, where it was like, okay, you are one of the elite best, 10 players in baseball in the entire sport. Had a WAR of, I think, 9.2 that year. Just had a couple seasons where he was off the charts good, where it kind of makes the other seasons where, he was a very good player. Now, you kind of put yourself in a different kind of category.